Thank you all. What a pleasure to be here. I'm still kind of tickled pink when I get to actually be in the room with live humans. I feel like COVID, for those of you that don't know me or just met me today, my extroversion scale is like 99.9. So the last 2 years of COVID was like being put in a mental hospital for me. So really appreciate the chance to be with you guys. And although, I work for a company that I'm incredibly proud to be at, and we get a lot of accolades, and we're very honored and privileged to do so, from being recognized as one of the most ethical companies, one that really focuses on diversity and inclusion. I come to you today as a person who is very committed to getting better. One of the kind of core premises of the company is we don't declare victory. Ever. We are very passionate that we have a lot more to learn. We have a lot more to do better. We made a lot of mistakes. And so today I'm going to share with you a little bit about our own journey. I'm going to be pretty vulnerable with my own personal leadership journey and some things that I'm working to develop, some things that I've learned along the way, some mistakes that I've made. Hoping that you might also be willing to share with us some of the things that you're working to improve, and maybe identifying with some of the scenarios that I've been in to, kind of identify some of our own unconscious biases, maybe some things that, we could all work on a little bit better, because I know if I have a group of accountability friends, which I'm hoping you'll all be, with me going forward, we'll all do a little bit better, not just in the companies, but in the communities we serve and the families that we're part of, because I think it's all very connected. So with that, let me just start with a little bit about change, and I'm going to share with you a little bit about our company as well, just for perspective. But please don't be mystified with the fact or think that because I work for Microsoft, leading in digital is easy. It's absolutely not. The pressure that is put on us and the expectation on us to be better at it because we create products that we, ask all of you to give us the courtesy of using from time to time, is phenomenal. But I'll tell you, we share all of the challenges that you do, probably in spades, with our employees, around the world. COVID was very hard for us, just like you all. We had large businesses. We had campuses where we had employees that, loved getting together. There was a sense of camaraderie. We built our business. We learned how to do our jobs by, having the luxury to step foot in your offices and be around you and sense what was going on and hear things firsthand that maybe somebody wasn't comfortable enough to say on a video call, and it was very disruptive for us. And so as we look at, hey, as a leader, how has this technology really changed the way I lead? Like, what do I need to learn? For me, it was my first time, even though I'm in a global role, it was my first time to lead a team that I never met in person, ever. Like, how am I actually going to show who I am as a person when I can't, just go to lunch with you, when I can't get a real hug? Like, I'm a hugger person. Like, beware, you will all probably get a hug the next time you see me. But it was a real challenge for me to say, like, hey, I kind of pride myself on people getting to know me as a person, my team getting to know me as a person, and then the work kind of just happens the right way if we're like good, right? Like, we look each other in the eye and we're like, hey, we're good, right? Well, how do you do that in a virtual setting? And can you do it in a virtual setting? Was a challenge that we posed to ourselves. And I think we've learned a lot that I'd love to share it and love to learn with you guys as well. So first, I want to start with just some workforce trends, and some of this may surprise you, but one thing at Microsoft that I really enjoy, but I didn't know when I was a customer that I now know as an employee, is we like data a whole lot. Knew that. But we actually have a research division. So one of the things that's unique about Microsoft is when the company was founded, it was founded with a research institution. So you can kind of think of it like we have our own version of MIT on campus. We're constantly doing research. We're constantly looking at the world. We're trying to look at all the ways you work, because at the end of the day, we build and create products to help you work better. So it makes sense. But it's something I didn't really know. And so a couple of things that I'd highlight were were really intriguing to us as we were looking at how will we not do what we've done in the past, but be the best version of ourselves in the future, and what challenges will our customers face that are also trying to do this journey together. So kind of from a global perspective, these were some of the things that were really interesting. You may think like, we're Microsoft, we don't have a problem hiring tech talent. We do. we can't fill the jobs that we have in the company, and we used to, only have a challenge hiring talent, retaining talent for probably the names you would think: Amazon, Google, Dell, all of the companies that are kind of known in tech. And now, as everyone's starting to be more and more technologically advanced, our employees want to come work for you guys, right? And other people around the world. So attracting talent and retaining talent is definitely top of mind, because we really see technology as a competitive edge for everyone. The one I want to highlight too is diversity and inclusion. And I'll tell you, I personally spend a lot of time on these words, because really, what do they mean? And so the way my team and I kind of look at it is, when you walk in a room, regardless of who you are, do you feel genuinely welcome? So when you walk in a room and you're the least senior person at the table, do you genuinely feel welcome and respected? When you walk in a room and you've only worked at the company for a week, do you genuinely feel welcome and heard? And kind of vice versa. And what I recognized in myself was, that wasn't natural DNA for me. I had grown up in a world that had higher respect and reverence for more senior leaders, candidly. And I had to challenge my personal biases to say, why am I treating anyone different than the person next to them? And where am I treating someone different than I'm treating someone next to them? And what do I do to actually make every single person feel like they got the gold, invitation to the conversation every day? And when they leave, do they really say, hey, I want to come back here because this is a place that I really want to be? And we'll talk more about that today. Let me just continue forward. Okay. This is some research that we just did. And it's a little hard for me to see the slides, so I have a copy here. 1 second. So a couple of things that, I found that I thought were really interesting, and this research just came out like in the last 2 weeks. So this is hot off the press, super current, and it's something that I think Jeremy mentioned in his. So one is end productivity paranoia. So I grew up in a world where, my father from the age of itty bitty was like, hey, were you productive today? What all did you accomplish? What did you get done? And what we learned is that leaders are continuing to say, hey, if I don't see my people, I don't really know what they're doing. Like I have a trust challenge with people still that are working in a way where maybe they're not where I can see it, maybe I can't tangibly produce that artifact, and how will I really be visibly shown? And I'll give you an example from my own experience where I was lucky to challenge the bias and get an opportunity. In one of my first leadership jobs at Microsoft, it was based out of our Dallas office. So we were talking at our table, Microsoft today doesn't have a physical office in the state. We actually prefer to office inside of all of your offices instead. But we have a very large office in Dallas. Dallas is our second largest campus to Redmond. And I was applying for a job that had always been based in Dallas, even though they said you didn't really have to live in Dallas. There was a tone that you did. And so when I interviewed for the role, I was in kind of the final interview, the person said, well, hey, we're so excited, we didn't think you'd move. And I said, I'm not going to move. And they were like, well, why are you interviewing for the job? And I said, well, I'm hoping that you'll agree that if I'm the best candidate, you'll measure me on the outcomes and not on the zip code that I live in. And it was a very uncomfortable moment for me and the person I was interviewing, to say, like, I had to think, how am I going to handle this question? I know I'm going to get it. What am I going to say? And then what am I going to do in order to be intentional about helping my leadership know the outcomes and the work I was doing, because they weren't going to see me physically in the office every day like they had all the people that had kind of gone before me. And I've had the same challenge, and I'm sure all of you have had that from time to time, and COVID forced us to think through. But there was that unconscious bias of, oh, she's just going to move here. That was part of it. And I'm lucky today to have a role that normally would only be based in Redmond, Washington, but fortunately, COVID kind of accelerated our thinking. I think the second one is embracing people that come in for each other. Kind of this all work, no play, or work is work, and personal life is over here, is something that I've really had to shape my thinking about. I mean, I grew up, in the South, was a very hard worker, and I was like, you don't look at Facebook during the day, you don't talk about that stuff during the day, maybe at lunch, maybe at the gym, not like at work. Like, work was something that was kind of compartmentalized. But what we've really learned, especially from our workforce, is loyalty is based to having a true feeling of belonging, and that having the person, not the resource, is way more important. And especially when you talk about ethics and cause, and do people really want to be here, making sure that the person feels valued, and talking about, like, how do you feel today, is a very important kind of paradigm. And then the last is just kind of reskilling. And this is something that I think, Oklahoma has always done tremendously well, and I've been very proud, but, recognizing that when we have a new need, we don't always have to hire somebody from the outside, but that we continue to reinvest. And so those are kind of the top three things that I think are very top of mind as we try to think about, okay, well, how do we lead today versus we did yesterday? Here's kind of just an iconic picture of Microsoft, and maybe like one of the visuals that you guys would think of. And I don't know if anyone in here ever owned one of those Microsoft phones that we used to sell, but that's what before Apple iPhone kind of was, when Microsoft had one of those colored phones. But we were really, so in the center is Satya Nadella. He's our CEO who kind of took the reins not very long ago. You'll identify with Bill Gates on my right, your left, and then Steve Ballmer. So those are kind of our three CEOs. And one of the things we had to really think about was, why change? Microsoft's been a top 5 company for as long as we've been alive. We're very thankful and grateful for that. But we knew we had to change, and we knew we had to change our culture. And so we were trying to figure out, like, what would happen to the world if we weren't here? Like, we had a really difficult, internal, thought-provoking moment, because we founded this company saying, hey, we want to change the world by putting a PC on every desk. And we had kind of gotten past that point. But now we were going, okay, what are we really going to do, and who do we serve? And do we serve companies? Do we serve people? Do we serve enterprises? Do we serve kind of all walks of life? And so we really stepped back and really looked at our culture and spent over 9 months trying to put our culture on a page, which for all of you who have tried to do this, and have probably done it really well, you know how hard it is to really conduce your mission statement to something that's believable, something that is long-standing, something that can really create a paramount vision for your organization. So this is ours. Empower every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more. I'll tell you a quick story. So another career maybe mistake or challenging moment in Lori Garcia's life. So I'm interviewing to go work for Microsoft, and I've done my research. Then kind of my final, before I go to work for Microsoft for the first time interview, and I said, help me break down this mission statement. Are you really helping going after my grandma? I want to know. I don't know that side of Microsoft. Totally believe that you're going after every Fortune 500 company in the world, and I see that. But I don't see the connection to this mission when I think about every person on the planet. That's kind of really audacious. Make me believe that that's true. And I'll tell you this, after working there almost 7 years, I'm super proud that that's absolutely true. And I saw a lot of it during COVID, and they came back and they said, hey, fair challenge. We weren't this company yesterday, we aspire to be this company tomorrow. And so you may or may not have seen things like, during COVID, we were very intentional about teaching older people, especially grandparents, how to play on Xbox and play video games so that they could talk to their grandkids. Something the company had never done before, but was something that was very much tied to the mission that we had never done. And so it's really interesting to think about a mission statement, but then to really challenge it and go, okay, what does this look like? Like, what does it look like at the far extreme, not the one that's like really comes to mind? And that's one of the things that, I try to do when I think about how do I work with my team is go, hey, how do I not just do the easy stuff that Microsoft's known for, but how do we really change the way we work and then change the way we show up so we can really do something different? And I'll tell you, one of the ways I think I got kind of called to the mission, if you want to think of it that way, was I was in a conversation and Satya was speaking in a very large room, and he said, if we don't do this, who will? Like, who was lucky enough to put a machine on desktop and convince everybody we needed email, so you need like 400, 500 of those a day? Like, how lucky were we to be in this spot where we really can enable the world in a different way, and we can really serve people that haven't been served, but now it's a different way to serve. So let's get to the fun part, which is culture. So as we were embarking on this culture journey, one of the things that we really needed to shift to was Microsoft was always known and revered as this kind of know-it-all company. We were proud of all of the things we had built. We had a tremendous number of patents, a lot of people on campus that had patents and very, very audacious titles. And we came into the room with the answer to the question before the question was asked. And I remember feeling that way in all of my past roles. Hey, am I prepared? Am I going to know all the questions that I'm going to be asked kind of ahead of time? And so we worked really hard on kind of this culture of growth mindset, which we call it. And I want to share with you kind of a little bit more about that as we go through and some of the things that we've learned. So the first one is honor your past, but define your future. And I don't know if all of you guys have probably been in these times where you're like, gosh, we need to change, but how do I do it in a respectful way? Because the reason I need to change is because all of this great stuff was done before I got here. I've been in scenarios where I've, replaced somebody, that did really great work, and I'm sure all of you guys have been in that scenario, and it's difficult to come in and say, okay, what am I going to do different? And so for us, one of the kind of principles that I think we did well, and we continue to try to do well, is say, hey, we're thankful for everyone that served every day yesterday before today. We're thankful for the work that got us here. We've learned a lot about that work, but now how do we use that in order to reshape kind of what we do tomorrow? And so kind of making sure we were honoring the past, I think, was something that was really helpful for us. We listened to people for a long time to try to figure this out. We still do this. One of the things we did was we used a consultant. It's Dr. Carol Dweck. She wrote a book called The Growth Mindset. And I'll give you an example if you haven't read the book. It's a great book. It's not just for kind of corporate perspective. It's great from a personal perspective. So I'll give you a personal perspective. There's an example in the book of a teacher who's grading a paper for a child that didn't get most of it right. And so instead of putting an F grade on the paper, she just wrote "not yet" and she handed it back. Think of how different that feeling is. Hey, did you fail at what you were accomplishing or setting out to accomplish? Or is somebody going to give you another shot? Very different kind of mindset. And so think of times when you've been in your organization and someone's brought you something and you're like, oh my God, that is not at all what I expected. It's really easy to criticize, right? And completely discount or discourage kind of the work. And so we're working a lot of times on okay, how do I reframe? How do I think about that in a kind of a different way? And kind of what could we do? So one of the things we did that may be something that some of you have done is we created a culture cabinet. So our senior executive team has a group of senior leaders that also has, people from all different parts of the organization. And we actually have a culture cabinet to try to keep us honest. To try to be very direct with what's working, what's not working, and to try to continue to set us on our course. And part of the reason for that is this on the right. So this is the way Microsoft was known at one time. We were known as kind of pointing fingers at each other. We would have this organization over here doing something, this organization over here doing something. It was kind of like, hey, best one to win the feature first is going to get to market, So it's like the amazing race going on inside of the company, and there wasn't this thought of, hey, I'm going to use things that other people have used. It's going to be really hyper competitive. And so a couple of things we keep in our culture that I think are very, very tied to Oklahoma. One is the spirit of giving. When we were thinking about how do we make sure that we're doing technology for good and not technology for bad, one of the things that's very centered to us is making sure that giving back is just core to who we are and what we do. And so, like as an example, as an employee, I'm super grateful. I have a benefit that every dollar I give, up to $15,000 is matched every year. Super generous. If I volunteer at an organization, Microsoft is gracious to give $25 in real cash to the organization for every hour I serve. And so it's very intentional, and it's somewhere we kind of put our money where our mouth is. But we believe that people are doing good and are seeing the problems that are in their communities is very core to our mission of her helping and serving every single person, not just the people that are in the corporations that we kind of know us about. Here's where I really want to spend some time on this kind of learn it all to know it all kind of mindset. And so a know it all is kind of defined as you kind of see here on your left. So critical thinking, fearful, insular, very heroic, very individual. And I'll tell you, as a leader, candidly, these are things people like. People like knowing, I did that. I knew that. I created that. I saved the day. Like we all grew up watching cartoons, right? Where that's what Superman did. We wanted to be that heroic moment, and sometimes those heroic moments feel good at an individual level. But when you pull up at an organizational level, they create very disruptive behaviors that are not healthy. And they're hard to spot. Like, I'll give you an example of things I say that I'm trying to not say, like, oh, so-and-so's a rock star. Well, they're not really a rock star. They did some really great work. But there's a lot of labeling that I think we all do, kind of in that, individualistic know-it-all kind of category. Kind of the learn-it-all. How brave are you? One Microsoft really leveraging the conversation. So I'll give you some examples of how this shows up. For those of you, when you walk into a conference room, does the most senior leader sit at the head of the table? And what does that feel like? Everyone will respect the level of the person and the authority of the person that sits in that chair. And they will respect in a way that that person responds or directs the conversation, right? It's just what we do. And it's not necessarily a bad thing, but I'll give you an example. So I had a team that always worked that way with a customer. And I took them to campus, and I put them in a conference room that didn't have any tables. It just we spent one day in a room with just sofas. And everybody was sitting at the same level. I will tell you, the dynamic of the conversation completely changed just because of the way the room was. And in talking with the person who was the most senior leader, he goes, Lori, I know exactly why you put me in this room. And I said, why? Do you think I put you in this room? And he said, to make me listen to my team. And I said, you're 100% right. I did. But it was an interesting dynamic. But even for me, it's made me think about when I go in a conference room, like, where do I sit? Do I try to command the room? Or do I leave my title at the door to have a real working conversation with my team? When I'm on kind of an online call, do I set a standard that says, hey, don't start until I get there? Or is it, hey, this is a conversation of the team, we know what we need to do, we can go on and get started? As an individual, when I'm the least senior person in the room, am I willing to say I don't know to a question when all my senior leaders are asking it of me? Sometimes it's super uncomfortable, but those are the things that we're really trying to work to embed in the culture. And I'd love you to look for it kind of in yours, because it shows up in spades, but it's very, very difficult to kind of unwind in your own persona, if you choose to, but also in your organization around. I actually have the same challenge with my kids. It's really easy for me to tell my 18-year-old exactly what he should do, because I'm pretty sure I know. But at the same time, do I ask him questions? Do I have him work it out? It's a different mindset. But I will tell you, in the teams that I see that really kind of challenge and ask the question, listening is a very underrated skill, and probably one that's super uncomfortable. Okay, I'm going to go quick through this one, but really netting out the culture in something that was super simple. I've already kind of said it before, but here's kind of the way we kind of cap it. The only place knowing is ahead of learning in the world is in the Webster's Dictionary. So you really have to commit to being a learning person versus kind of a knowing person. But I will tell you, it's something I have to work on, just constantly. Okay, a little bit about kind of culture and kind of how this transforms, and how I'm really trying to work on it myself is where are your biases and how do they show up? So I'll tell you another example of a conversation I had. So I'm with one of my favorite teammates, out on a trip right before COVID, and we're talking about hiring and all this hiring we need to do for diversity and inclusion, and we want to be customer obsessed, and we want to figure out all these things. Anyway, long story short, we know each other really well, so he has none of his guard on, right? He's not thinking about anything before he says it, so it's coming out raw. And he goes, Lori, it's really rare for girls to be smart and pretty. I don't even know how that came up, but it came out in the moment. We're just walking, and I'm like, okay, wait a minute, let me rewind for a minute. In my head, did that really just come out? And so then I had to go, okay, what's the moment for me? What is the learning moment here for me? And I was like, okay, my younger self, candidly, would have just changed the subject and moved on. My older self, I'm going to be 50 before too much longer, is like, okay, I want to hear. So I said, hey, tell me more. Why did you tell me more about what you just said? And he was like, well, what did I say? And I said, well, this is what you just said. Tell me more. And I had to frame it in a way where I wasn't going to be like, tell me more, I'm going to punch you right now type of way, which was a little bit of the feeling I had. But I said, hey, tell me more. And the reality was, he was just raised in a world where women didn't work most of the time. And he, at the end of the day, we had a great conversation. He shared a little bit with me about it and kind of why he said what he said, right? It was a real bias, right? Just happened to come out. And we kind of left it with this frame. I said, okay, here's my ask. I said, I've got a lot of stuff I'm working on too. So this is not a judgment thing. But I'm going to be your accountability buddy in this journey, and you're going to be mine, and things I'm trying to work on. I said, and here's my challenge to you. You have 2 daughters, and I think they're both brilliant and beautiful. And I'm not going to give any reason that they can't be both. He goes, so now that we know that you have this, we're going to work on this together. And he called me a couple of years later, really not that long ago, and he's told me, he said, He said, Laura, you're the only person that's ever given me a performance conversation that has stuck with me for life. You know, and I was super grateful for that. But my challenge to you all is you hear those things and you probably let them go. I know I did, you know, kind of before. And in the last couple of years with COVID, I had to really go like from a culture perspective, what is the culture I'm trying to build? And when I'm in the moment, it's super uncomfortable, am I gonna pause and kind of call out somebody's bias? And am I gonna ask people to call mine out too? So I'll give you one of my own personal ones. We interview a whole lot of people, as you guys do, you know, as well. And we were in an interview, and you know, we had two really great candidates. One of them had a lot of characteristics and traits that were very similar to mine. So you know how you tend to hire people that are like you. So I've recognized that about myself. The other person, you know, English was a second language. They came to the interview super prepared. They were the best candidate. And we did offer that candidate. But I'll tell you, in the discussion, you know, I'm sitting there going, okay, this person may take a little bit more time from me. I'm going to need to adjust the way I work, because this more talented person that I think is going to do this job exceptionally well is going to slow me down some days, because I need to listen and really pay attention and not multitask and do some other things. I had to really think about that as I was hiring, and I'm super excited that we hired this person, tremendously capable, built a much more well-rounded team. But I will tell you, I'm continually working on myself and interviewing, in hiring, in you know, recommending people for promotions and candidacies based on their work and based on how they work, and really trying to build a team that doesn't all look the same, act the same, think the same, because when I do that, or when we do that, we all have the same blind spots, biases, but not easy to do. Okay, you cannot fake this. It's very, very hard to fake your culture, and I'm sure you guys see that, but it does happen. When people say, how are you doing? Do you say I'm fine? Do you say I'm good when I'm not? Do you say you're tired? Do you say you're frustrated? Do you say what the real word is? I'll tell you, like that's been something I've had to really work on. I think a lot of us have to work on. It's not easy, it's hard to do. Making sure that we have a purpose-driven mission is not just about culture. You know, making sure that we're evolving in every step that we do, that we can think about, you know, what we need to do tomorrow is different than what we did yesterday. You know, really rethinking, like, what do we do now, right? Right now we're in potentially in a recession. We have a lot of, you know, world dynamics at play that we haven't had before. Every time we think we got past one, like the mothership comes, you know, next. You know, like you do COVID, you think you're over that. COVID 2 comes after that. Then there's like a world war. Like, you know, sometimes we need to just be like, hey, maybe this is good. You know, like, but really thinking about how do we build that in something that we can really do. And so we spend a lot of time on the word empowerment. And what does that really mean? Because I think we all kind of throw the word around, and so empowering people is not like a gimme thing. So for us, we go like, hey, with the right tools, anyone can do anything. That's really empowering a person that's, you know, kind of inside of our mission. Okay, next one. How do we really symbolize changes, big and small? So we've done quite a bit in this area. We try to think about it in a lot of different ways. It's not easy to do. What do you say on your company website? What do you do? I'll tell you some that have happened during COVID. You know, before COVID, none of us turned on our video cameras, right? I did not either. Now we all turn on our video cameras. What is displaying in your background? is now a way that people are using to identify things that are important to them. You know, you may see books that are on their wall, you may see pictures of their kids, you may see things that they, you know, really strongly believe in and advocate for. I've had times where employees have called me and said, did you see that t-shirt somebody was wearing? Like, oh my gosh, they're wearing this t-shirt. Like, and did you see what it said? And I was like, yes, I did. What about that? They're like, they're talking about their beliefs. Yes, they are. But are we comfortable with knowing that people can really come as their best self to work? And where is a line drawn and where is it not drawn is something that has been, you know, really difficult, I think, to say, like, is there a line at all? And so we've kind of shifted into this culture that says, bring your best self to work and come as you are. So bring your authentic self. And if your authentic self for us, and, you know, we're a tech company on, you know, the East Coast, so we can do a lot of things that are easier than some other companies may not. If that means you've got red hair and 10 earrings, that's fine. If that means you're wearing sweatpants to work, that's fine. If that means, you know, you're just wearing flip-flops and, you know, whatever you're wearing, whatever you're doing, like, come as you are. And what we've learned is when people pretend to be someone else based on the way that they're dressed, they are pretending to have values, or they're playing a part in the role that they're in, and they're not really coming, you know, as they genuinely are, and we're not really better served. But I'll tell you, sometimes we're hosting people on campus, and everybody's like, who's that? I'm like, oh, and that person works directly for our CFO. Or they're like, oh, wow. But it's been an interesting thing to try to listen in and you know, kind of figure out. And so a couple of other things that we've been working on kind of related to this is the concept of allyship. And so allyship for us is like, if we're really trying to make everyone come to work as they are, and we want everyone to be welcome, here's the next challenge. Which group of people do you feel like is not welcome? And are you truly being an ally for that group? So for me, I'll give you, you know, another example. For me, I'm very passionate about supporting women with children. During COVID, I had a very good friend that called me just complete tears one day. She had been called out a couple of times for not being on video camera, because everybody else was on video camera. And she was like really struggling. I didn't have time to wash my hair. I got like my 3-year-old doing homework over here. Like, I got a lot of stuff going on. Like, I'm really not feeling like I'm presenting my best self on this video camera, but everybody's kind of making fun of me. Well, she called me in tears because she had turned on her video camera the next day, and her 3-year-old had walked out the door and she didn't know. I mean, nightmare of all nightmares. And so I'm on a call, you know, the next day with a group of people, and they're like, we just do not understand why everybody is not turning on their video cameras, you know, all the time. And so we had this thing going on called video shaming, was really the word. We were shaming people and making people feel unwelcome if they weren't in a moment where they could turn on their video camera, because now all of a sudden everybody needed to turn on their video camera all the time. And, you know, we had to kind of call out and say, like, hey, what's the difference if someone has their, like, isn't that a personal choice to turn on your video or not turn on your video? And is it okay to say, like, hey, everybody, I'm going for a walk right now because I've been studying for 10 hours and I got to get up? And so, like, how do you deal with kind of that social norm? But for people that, you know, didn't have an extreme circumstance going around them, had a beautiful home. I mean, I had one person that was actually doing her video calls in her closet, because that was the only place it was quiet in her house, you know, during the day. And she's like, I'm not really turning on my video camera in my closet. You know, but really hard. And it was an awakening moment for me to not assume that my circumstance was the circumstance that everybody else was, because we were all mentally playing this song in our head that was like, I'm in COVID too, I'm having to deal with kids too, you're doing the same thing that I'm having to do, so if I've got my camera on, you should have your camera on, type of thing. And so we have a lot of those scenarios going on. I'm sure you guys do too. I'm eager to hear more kind of about them as we get through, but I would encourage you guys to continue to think about ways that people, are feeling welcome and unwelcome. And what I try to do is say, like, hey, just pick one group. Just pick one group that's important to you and kind of look out for them to see if there's something that you could do to make their day just a little bit better. Something else that we had to change at Microsoft was our performance and reward system. This was not an easy task for us. So we knew if this was the culture that we really wanted, then how are we going to pay for performance? And how are we going to embed these values into the career conversations that we have with everyone, from time to time? And so a couple of things that you'll see here, we have kind of 3 circles. Circle 1 is your individual impact, so the work that you actually do and your key accomplishment. The second is, who else did you make successful? Like, how did you contribute to someone else's success? And then the third is, how did you build on other people's work? So we had this hero culture that we had said, I invented it myself. So if I invented it, then it's better and I should be applauded more. So we had to take that out of the culture by saying, well, hey, did you think if someone else has done that before? Where did you learn from someone else's work? How did you advance the cause of others? And instead of only recognizing the individual accomplishments, which of course we expect, we had to infuse a way for people to start really encouraging them to help other people. So we got rid of all those labels that we all hate, like, are you average, above average, exceptional, or kind of whatever. We took all the words away. We went to these 3 circles, and we really went to kind of a performance-based system that was trying to shape this reward of this learning culture and helping culture into everything we do. The next thing we talked about was, okay, how do you really make it who you are? So we're lucky that, and I'm sure all of you guys are the same, we're lucky to have tremendous leadership at the top, but if you don't bake it down into everything you do, it can really it's not real, and it's not something that people happen to do. And so a couple of things that we put into kind of our value statements. So respect, I mentioned it earlier, but it's really, do we recognize people's thoughts and feelings? I used to not have one-on-ones where I said, how do you feel today? What is worrying you? Where are you frustrated? How can I help? I was used to doing, one-on-ones and getting straight to business. Like, hey, are we on track to get this out the door next week? Do we have this done? And really, working with customers to go, like, what are the feelings that we have going in this group, and how can we use that? Integrity was, something that I think we say a lot, but I don't know that we always have it. And I'll give you kind of some of my own learning was a lot of times I was, and you may too, I was saying I was fine when I wasn't. I was, pretending to have a lot of energy when I was completely burned out. I had a lot of things going on, so how do I really see something? You guys think of an example of a time when you're in a meeting and you hear something and you're like, that's not really true. Like, it's kind of true, but I don't know that you're saying the whole truth here. And so how do we create an environment to where what you say and what you do is the same? And then accountability wasn't holding other people accountable, but how do I accept accountability on myself? So when I make a mistake, do I acknowledge it kind of in front of my team, and do I ask their help and forgiveness? So a couple of other things I wanted to get to. So these are kind of our manager expectations around kind of modeling, coaching, caring, like how do we treat our leaders? How do we implement these into a way that we can make sure that they're standing firm? And so one of the things that, kind of shifted for us was, and we do this in a lot of our team meetings, we'll kind of just start with a story. What is a story of something that happened this week that shows how our culture is evolving? And sometimes there'll be great stories, sometimes there'll be stories that are maybe harder to share. This particular case is a story about a person that has Parkinson's, where we developed some technology to help the person write. So we have a lot of really great stories that we share, but by giving people the space to come in and highlight a person in their team, highlight a customer scenario, bring in a challenge to the conversation before we just went straight to work, was something that was, really helpful for us to do. Communicating is something that I think, we say a lot, it sounds easy, we do it really poorly, or we wouldn't keep talking about it all the time. But it's not just, what we say, but what we do that was super important for us. And so one of the things, we changed was we encouraged everybody in the company to really know our aspirations, to know our stories, to be open with our customers around like what we're trying to do, what we're trying to learn, and to learn more from our customers so that we can bring that back and things like today. Letting technology accelerate the change. So some of you I know are CIOs, are fans of tech. I will tell you the tech part, you would think at Microsoft would be easy. It might be one of the hardest parts. There are a lot of words in tech that are racially incorrect. So for example, historically, when you were looking at, websites to block or unblock, you had the whitelist and the blacklist. There are just a lot of words that are just, very much, kind of ingrained in the way that tech works. So we said, okay, we're going to use tech to help us see if we're actually getting better at this or worse at this. Like, how can we actually look at our technology, look at what people are saying, and actually kind of improve? And so we really picked these 4 things. 1, we're going to count it. If we can count it, we're going to count it, and we're going to talk about it. 2, we're going to look at myths and insights. 3, we're going to really expect collaboration. And the 4th one is connecting at scale. And that's the one I really want to spend some time on with you guys. And then we'll take a couple of questions. So on connecting at scale, one of the things that we did was we said, okay, how can we actually get connected with every single person in a one-to-one fashion? So I'll tell you a couple ways that I think about this. Do people that are multiple levels below me reach to me directly? Or do they only come to me through their bosses? I don't want them coming to me through their bosses. I want to add value to them. I want to have direct relationships with them. I want to be viewed as approachable. And so, things like Teams, whether it's email, whether it's in person, who really stops you in the hall to kind of ask you questions, and then will they also tell you hey, I saw something that didn't feel right today. I wanted to talk to you about that. Or hey, I was in a situation, I wasn't really sure how to handle it. Can I talk through the experience with you and kind of get some suggestions and ideas? Were really, really powerful for us to talk in groups, to talk in rooms, to talk to people one-on-one. But we had to really step back as leaders and go how do we know if this is working? And so one of the signals we really look at is people talking, skipping levels and skipping down levels in an organization. We also look, do people go horizontal? So if you've acquired a company or you think about people and you go, are people really working together, or do we have these silos of people, that I told you we were trying to get rid of? We go okay, well, are people in this department going to lunch with people in this department? Or people in this department talking without it going up their boss chain and kind of across, which is kind of the natural evolution. And so some things we did was we said, okay, well, when we send you to training, you no longer have to go to training with your team. You can go to training, any of these times virtually or in person, but no longer do you go with your group because we think you need to spend more time with your group. You can just go to training with anybody that you would like to. Let me go to this last one. So 2 more. 1, keeping all oars in the water. Not easy to do, but very easy to say. So how do we know that we're all kind of working on this mission to get better every day? And I'll tell you one of the ways I think that's been most helpful for all of us to kind of learn is to ask more questions that aren't the what's going well, but it's the what's not going well. So, hey, think through the last week, and where did you have a time where you were in a meeting that you felt unwelcome or uncomfortable or unheard? What happened? How did you handle that situation? What could you do different? Like self-reflecting on myself. Was I in a meeting where I felt unwelcome, unheard? Did I handle it the best that I could? What could I have done different? Did I do it to someone else? How can I really think about my own self-reflections? And so a lot of us have made commitments that kind of like at the end of every week. So on Fridays, I have like a note on my calendar that really just says, self-reflect, hold myself accountable. Really like pause and try to just think, because I can't remember what I do every day, but I can sit back and I can easily kind of reflect on the week to try to see. And then building an accountability group to help us improve, but really, it's easy to give the performance review feedback that's like, oh, you're great, everything's awesome, thank you, thank you, thank you. If you think about it, it's really tough for people to give feedback in a constructive way about where you need to improve. But when you think about your family and the people that you hold close, it's not hard, right? You count on your family to say you have spinach in your teeth. You count on your family to say, don't wear that out the door. You count on people that are close to you to give you kind of that honest feedback. And so I think one of the things, we're trying to always pulse on the organization is, if you're talking about the things that aren't really the good things, then you're really moving the culture forward, which we want to do. And then, last but definitely not least is, stay the course. Like I said at the beginning, we will commit to never declaring victory. The game is very long. It's very hard. We count on all of you guys to, push each other and to help us learn from kind of your experiences and mistakes, and to let us be forgiven when we made some mistakes, and we commit to the same thing, to forgive others and to kind of learn versus expect perfection all along the way. Okay, so with that, I think we have maybe just a couple minutes to take some questions, or anybody else to share some feedback. And I know there's people online as well, so let me know. Somebody is keeping the clock to make sure that we're on time. Okay, awesome. First question is, how are people creating energy or celebrating others in a virtual environment? It's so good. We just had a conversation about this. And then second question is, how do you recognize and encourage growth instead of accomplishment? So I'll take the first one. I'll take these in order. So how are people creating energy or celebrating others in a virtual environment? I'll tell you a couple things that are working. I'd love any ideas from the rest of you. One, we're being more vocal on LinkedIn. So, we use LinkedIn a lot. It's a business stage. So we had somebody that, was celebrating their 10-year anniversary. So we were like, why are we not posting that on LinkedIn? That's a big deal. It's not just a big deal in the company, it's a big deal for this person's professional career. So where do we have moments that we can really applaud somebody's, external brand and thank them in a public forum, which in the past would have been a, picture in the newspaper, type of thing that we would have done. And so we're enjoying getting better at that. We do a lot of online happy hours, and online lunches, and we give the person the same thing you would do in a, physical forum. We say, hey, tell us about your reflection. Tell us what you just did. We heard about this great, accomplishment that you had. Please share it, with the team. And just, kind of using virtual technology to not prevent doing that. I'd say the other thing that I think we've gotten better at that's gone a long way is sending things to families and not just the individual. We are a firm believer that your support structure at home, whatever that may look like, humans, animals, the whole shebang is super important to people's well-being, and we know we take a lot from people, and so sending things to spouses and children and saying, we sent one thing I can remember to the children of someone that did something really great, and we said, hey, ask your dad about what he did this week at work. It was super cool. And that's all we said. And so, this big fruit arrangement comes to the names of the kids, not to the dad, and so he gets to talk about it with his family and, have a moment to shine, which I think is really fun. Okay, anybody have anything else to add? Better tips? I would love to learn. Okay. And second question, how do you recognize and encourage growth instead of accomplishments? Examples. This is a good one. I can think of a couple of scenarios. So we had a time when we were asking everyone to take pretty difficult certification exam. And so it was hard. And so I took it and flunked. Sent my failure report to the entire team. I said, hey, this test is hard as everybody said. I just took it and I flunked. I said, so let's make some study groups and let's figure this out, together. And part of why I did it was I knew other people were failing the test as well, even though they had studied a whole lot. I'd studied a little bit, but I thought, let me go see how hard this thing really is. It was pretty hard. And they were like, all of a sudden it was okay to fail. Like I said, the teacher said, hey, next time, instead of I flunked, my thing did say failed, big bold letters on the top. But I still sent it to everyone, and I said, but I was like, hey, we're not going to give up. And so then, there were some people in the team. I remember in particular a guy who took this exam 5 times and was so excited when he passed. And we had one of the teams that every single person passed because we didn't care how many times it took. We were just like, hey, we're going to figure this out. We're going to learn it together. Share your scores. Everybody share your flunk report. We're going to put them all together. We're going to figure out what we need to do. And so it was more important. The journey of getting to passing the exam was now more exciting, I think, than actually passing the exam. But it's not an easy thing. Okay, next question. What can an employee do if the culture they are in is more of a blaming culture versus a learning culture? That's a hard one. So I'll tell you what one of my executive coaches said. It's kind of like your house. If you don't like it, you move. And so I think there's a, that's a very individual question to say, hey, is this person in a scenario where they believe in the long term and that it will get to where they want to do? Or is the company and culture not a match for the individual? And I think that's a tough conversation. For me personally, I've decided if it's really not good for me, I'm going to take another job. I'm not going to work for a bad boss. I told you guys, I'm almost 50. I'm old enough now, I'm not going to work for a bad boss. I have the right to choose. I think we're lucky that, a lot of people have a lot of freedom of choice with where they work. But regardless, I do think the person, depending on their scenario, can try to call it out, in a way. Because I will say it's human nature to blame. And it may not be the kind of natural thing, but I'd love to learn from you guys as well. So I think we're at time. Thank you so much for giving me all of your attention for so long. I know it's a long conversation, but I'll look forward to learning from you guys and staying in touch. It's a true pleasure to be here. Thank you.